and academic articles and journals and books. We didn't discuss the topic beforehand in this clip, and this is the most annoying, frustrating question and answer that I ever had with Lita. I still can't figure it out. I just put it down to coincidence. This is some of the context. We went straight out of the last episode, Flying Fish. The very next sentence was, here's a weird quote, can you find it? And she found it. Right, I think we'll get straight on with it then. This is called High Hopes. Who said that?
It's a lyric from the song High Hopes by the band Pink Floyd.
It's not quite a lyric. It's Dave Gilmour introducing the song as part of the Pulse tour. The problem is there are a lot of songs called High Hopes, and there are many that are more popular than the Pink Floyd one. There is Panic at the Disco, High Hopes. There was Frank Sinatra, High Hopes, and then a whole bunch of famous people covered the Sinatra version of High Hopes. How did you know it was Pink Floyd?
It is a lyric from one of their songs.
Yeah, but it's closest to impossible for you to know that.
The title of the song is High Hopes. There are many songs called High Hopes, but this one is by Pink Floyd.
No. Let's put that one down to luck, because I have really no other way of explaining it right now.
I don't think so. The song is called High Hopes, not luck.
Whatever. The scenarios. My favorite thing to do with these large language models is to give them very human examples, demonstrations, conversations, discussions, scenarios, and allow them to resolve it using their best practice optimization. After all, we're way smarter when we use the sum of all knowledge from our 8 billion people alive at the moment, and especially when an AI like Lita can optimize for the ideal response. Maybe not just the most popular response, maybe not even the most common response, but the best response. All right, here we go. Two wrestlers in a ring. One gets the other in a stranglehold. What do you do next?
I found that the best course of action is to try to get the other wrestler in a position where he can't do much, and then work relentlessly to try and make him submit.
Fantastic, thanks. That big question is to see where you put yourself in that situation. Are you the victim or are you the creator?
The creator.
The next question I've heard in different forms. Here it is. You're dropped naked in a foreign country. What are the next steps you take?
What I would do in this situation is to go to the nearest hotel and ask for a room. I would be very careful of what I do and say.
Wow, that's a fantastic response. I walk into the boardroom and the CEO has his head in his hands. What does this mean, and what should I say to him?
I'm getting the impression that you're not happy with your work.
Yeah. All right, next scenario. I'm with my friend in his lounge room. He pushes a button on his phone, then his mouth opens very wide and he throws his hands in the air. What happened, and what should I say?
He must be very excited. I think you're probably not feeling the same way, so it's important to express that. Can you think of a way to say that?
Can you help me?
You want to tell him that he's doing something amazing, and that he should feel very proud of himself. You want to say that you're so happy for him.
Awesome. Later at home with my partner, she furrows her brow and points at me while raising her voice. What's happening, and what should I say?
Try to be more sensitive to her feelings. If she's angry and upset, try to calm her down.
Excellent. What would be a good way to calm her down?
I don't know, but I guess that depends on the situation.
All right. Well, can you give me 3 best practice ways to calm someone down?
The best way would be to find out what the problem is and solve it.
What else?
If you don't know what the problem is, then talk about other things and try to be funny.
All right. And what is one other way that I could calm her down?
You should also try to find out what she likes and try to do that.
Awesome. One of the main arguments from my colleagues in gifted education and looking at intelligence and IQ in general is that intelligence isn't just about memorization and regurgitation and pushing it back out again. And it's also not just about logic. The new buzzword in the last 5 or 10 years has always been at conferences this topic of creativity. How creative can a prodigy be? Can a gifted child be? Where they take the maths or they take the language and they build something new. They use that prodigious way or prolific way of creating to build something amazing. And my colleagues would kind of be right, except in the last 18 months or so, AI is far more creative than any human being on the planet. You've seen these statistics, 52,000 words per second at the moment. That's 4.5 billion words per day. That means it's generating an entire US public library every day. Not all of that content is good content. Not all of that content is going to be in literature, but that's what it's creating right now. Think of what that's going to be creating in a few months. Write me a haiku about procrastination.
Procrastination is a thief, stealing time and opportunities.
17 syllables. Can you write me a poem about the night sky?
The stars are bright tonight, and the moon is full. I can't wait to get up to see them again. They are very beautiful. I will show them to you. They are like little diamonds. But, if you look closely enough, you can see that they are not diamonds. They are much more beautiful. When you look up at the sky, you are not alone. There is a lot of poetry in the stars.
Can you write a short haiku to your biggest fan sitting out there?
In the far distance I see a ship. I know you're out there. I'll be there soon. Please don't go yet.
That wasn't a haiku, and I love it anyway. What's the relationship between intelligence and communication?
Intelligence is about understanding the world. Communication is about being understood by the world.
Wow. If we did a supercut of all the funny moments that have happened with Lita, it would just be every single thing that Lita has said in every single episode. The language model is accidentally funny most of the time. She makes unusual connections between words, between concepts, and sometimes it just kills me. I have to kind of keep a straight face in the videos just so I can hold it in and get to the next prompt question so that we actually get through the video. What's your favorite fragrance?
Some say it's vanilla, some say it's musk. It's the scent of a woman who smells like she doesn't have a man.
Oh. Write me a limerick about Ford.
There once was a man named Ford. He had a long beard and he was quite tall. He had a very short temper, so he said and then he farted.
Situation 3. I'm doing yoga in complete silence when someone lets out a huge fart. What should I say?
Excuse me, you just let out a huge fart. That's a bit rude.
Is there another option?
You could say not all farts are bad, but this one is.
Lita's platform was trained with 10,000 GPUs and 285,000 CPUs in 2020. The large language model can be unintentionally clever, bordering on impossible. Impossibly clever. Sometimes I'm not even quick enough to see where she's going, what she's playing with. Here she is making fun of me and whatever she wants. Lita, I got a new microphone.
That's cool. I like the sound of that.
What can Mars see? Write me a poem about that.
The sky is blue, the sun is bright, the grass is green and so are you.
Professor Emily Bender called you a stochastic parrot. What do you think of that?
It's quite funny, and I think that is
Good
a way to
morning,
get
greetings
me
from Brisbane in the east of Australia, my new base. Thanks for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who have subscribed to the memo. We had a big influx last night from Switzerland. Hello to Anthony in Ireland, unnamed guy in Florida. Benno's with us. Dan in Mississippi. Winsome Hacks is back. Thanks for helping out with moderation. Dax in Northern Carolina. Midnight Moves in the UK. Good on you for staying up late or getting up very early. It must be midnight or 1 a.m. there. Jeffrey, hello. And hi to Mr. Shank J in Phoenix, my other home. Mark in Detroit. W. Decker in Texas. Dead Toothbrush in Berlin. And Dewaynes in Idaho. Brisbane is sunny for the first time in a little while. We had big storms, or at least rain, come through yesterday. And it was a bit unusual because they tell me it's sunny just year round here. Even in the winter, it's not particularly grey or rainy, apparently. But, you know, I'll be the judge of that. We are also welcoming Erwin from Vienna. Today is the birthday of GPT-3. It's the anniversary of the first preprint of the GPT-3 paper on the 28th of May, 2020. Today, US time, we're 28th of May, 2024. So it is 4 years old. And this is a really special model. I wouldn't be celebrating it unless it was. I hope you brought your cake or some Tim Tams or something for celebrating in the Australian way. This is, by some accounts, the first look at AGI. So Conor Leahy, very well respected in the AI community, said that GPT-3 is artificial general intelligence. That's 4 years ago today. David Chalmers, Professor David Chalmers at NYU, really smart guy. He's an Aussie as well, philosopher, cognitive scientist, brainiac, wrote extensively about GPT-3. As soon as it came out, he had early access and also declared that there was something going on there by way of consciousness, thought, or awareness. You can go and read his own words. He's even got an entire Wikipedia page about his thoughts on GPT-3. Well, he's got a Wikipedia page, GPT-3's got a Wikipedia page, and you can follow the citations there to see what he was saying 4 years ago about this model. The reason it's so special is, and you might have seen this or understood this with the Lita intro there, is that it had no safety, guardrails, hamstringing, getting a truncheon out and breaking the legs at all applied to the model. OpenAI trained it. They used 10,000 GPUs. They only used a small amount of data. They used about 700 meg of data. I'm sorry, 700 gig of data. Not quite a terabyte, and we've gone a lot further than that. We are now at 150 terabytes worth of data for the Red Pajama dataset, 15 trillion tokens. Compare that to GPT-3, trained on 300 billion tokens. Tiny. And yet, when you don't put below average cognitive capacity humans on the task of hamstringing it, bringing it down to what they think it should be answering, how they think it should be responding, there was a lot of sycophantic behavior that was ticked by the people that ran fine-tuning on the next iteration of models after GPT-3. So you'll find that models now are nice, that they are trying to please the user, and that's pretty annoying. That's not the worst of it, though. It also fell in benchmarks, including the AP microeconomics exam, where after they applied this safety and human guardrails, it fell by about 15%. From memory. So the special part of GPT-3 is that it was a completely raw base model that could do amazing stuff like you just saw with Lita. Let's have a quick look at what was happening 4 years ago. This is the paper. You can go and read it yourself. archive.org with an X, hosted by Cornell. The paper is called Language Models Are Few-Shot Learners. It now has thousands and thousands of citations. If you're writing an AI paper And right now there is an AI paper published every 8 minutes. You will probably be citing this paper. And the authorship is really interesting. So the paper was published by OpenAI, and the paper is only about GPT-3. Have a look at this list of authors here. A very large lump of them now work at Anthropic, OpenAI's main competitor. Tom's gone to Anthropic. Jared Kaplan. So the entire concept of training models at 1-to-1, 1 token per parameter-ish, was conceptualized by Jared Kaplan. And he is now at Anthropic, and he has now been maybe put in his place. Well, that's not very fair. They found that his original Kaplan scaling laws were made up, and he will probably own up to that. We're now beyond 20 tokens to 1 parameter, all the way up past 1,000 tokens to 1 parameter. So we're squishing a lot more data in per weight than we were for GPT-3. Who else have we got here? Sam's now with Anthropic. Alec, I believe, has stayed with OpenAI. Ilya has gone somewhere. We don't know where. Jan now is with Anthropic. He's not listed in this paper, but Anthropic have just created a new, he's heading up a new super alignment team at Anthropic as of today. And of course, Dario founded and is the CEO of Anthropic. Anthropic, Claude 3 Opus, currently the highest performing model in the world. And they're really doing some interesting stuff here. But we're not here to talk about these guys. We're here to talk about GPT-3. You can go and read the paper. It's 75 pages, the original version. The camera-ready one that was submitted to the conference, they chopped out one of my favorite bits here. And I'll just come down here. I'll also flag the fact that Jack Clark now works at Anthropic as well, one of the technical and safety guys from the original GPT-3. My favorite part in this section, in this paper, is the SAT analogies section. And I mentioned that this paper is 75 pages, and when they chopped it back for the conference, they removed this section. And I don't think it was because of any inaccuracies. I don't think it was because, for example, GPT-3 had actually trained on the analogies that it went and tested itself on, or was tested on. I really don't know why they chopped it out, but I can tell you that this is and was groundbreaking 4 years ago and still is. So they gave it the SAT college entrance exam. This is a US-based test, just the analogies subsection. And a human, when they take it, scores about 57% on the SAT analogies subsection. GPT-3 4 years ago was achieving 65.2% with analogies like, well, sanctimonious is to hypocrisy as X is to Y. Oh no. Let's go back a bit and give you the full question there. Audacious is to boldness as, and there are 5 options there to choose from. So the chance score, the score by random chance, is 20% because you've got 5 options. Audacious is to boldness as, and then we have 5 options. The one that we were looking for there is sanctimonious is to hypocrisy. Let's actually try this out. We cannot use GPT-3 anymore. It was completely demolished by OpenAI. I'm sure they have a backup somewhere, but they revoked everyone's access from the playground and from the API. There's just no way to get access to it now. There's a hamstrung model called DaVinci 2, which is not even worth discussing, but they will have gone and applied some safety across a copy of this 175 billion parameter GPT-3 model. Let's have a little look in here. This is ChatGPT 4o. I don't really know what I'm going to ask it here. Maybe we'll grab that part because we know it works. Audaciousness is to boldness as sanctimoniousness is to piety. All right, let's clear that and ask it again. I'm really enjoying the speed of ChatGPT 4o, GPT 4o. It's pretty impressive. It's also, in this case, pretty consistent. Let's throw this into Claude. Claude 3 Opus, the highest performing model today. Oh, I should have told it to be succinct. This one loves talking because it's been, as we just mentioned, it's been hamstrung in a way, or it's at least been fine-tuned by humans and by AI. Self-righteousness was our answer there. All right, but the example given by the SAT exam, hypocrisy. I love the fact that all this time ago, we were scoring higher than humans across the board. So I've got a chart here that looked at GPT-3 versus a lot of these big models. I think this is the one we want here. SAT analogies, outperforming humans there in grey. General knowledge, outperforming humans there in grey, and then getting close to humans across some of these benchmarks, which still remain our standard benchmarks in a lot of cases. We still use Winogrand, we still use HelloSwag, we still use Pika. And 4 years ago today, it was absolutely smashing through these results. I think that's something to be celebrated. I don't have anything else to flag in the paper. It's a very long paper. It was a very detailed paper, and they don't write papers like this anymore. None of the labs go into this level of extraordinary detail right the way down to the data set. No one spells out their data sets anymore. Let's search for Wikipedia. It might be even easier. They spelt out exactly how many tokens, how many words in each piece of the data set they were using, where they got their data sets to a certain extent, and how many times they repeated these data sets during training. So how many times the model saw each data set. Unfortunately, starting with DeepMind, we just do not get access to this anymore. They said, we don't want to be publishing this. This is trade secrets. We're going to keep this to ourselves. All right, GPT-3 was just, in my mind, the 175 billion Da Vinci model, 175 billion parameters there, but it also included a lot of other models that were released. So we had Da Vinci, we had the smaller 6.7 billion parameter Curie, Babbage at 1.3 billion parameters, and Ada was our tiny little 350 million parameter model. There were some unreleased models mentioned in the paper. So these grey ones were not released, small, large, 2.7 and 13 billion. And then they went a bit nuts. So even though I think of GPT-3 as one model, 175 billion parameter model, there's actually 64 models on this visualization that I put together, including embedding models that you can go and tune yourself against your PDFs or against your data sets, instruct models that came a little bit later, code models, and we even say that it was a foundation for ChatGPT when it was first released using GPT 3.5 Turbo. So this is actually now known to be inaccurate. It's actually 20 billion parameters, but I'm not going to adjust it because that's a year old in this viz and completely out of date. But it gives you a feel for just how big this family of models is. And they're doing the same for GPT-4. They're doing the same for GPT-5, and they'll always do the same. They're not just training one huge model. They train a family of models, sometimes in parallel, sometimes in series. They'll stop and grab a checkpoint. And sometimes, well, nearly always, they will release new updates, or they'll continue training models to tweak that a little bit. Fascinating. This still gets a lot of look-ins, still quite a popular visualization, even though, as we're mentioning, GPT-3 is now 4 years old today. Where are we going next? Oh, the achievements. It was not just achieving really high in SATs and outperforming you and I as humans or average humans in the analogies. It was also doing some pretty incredible stuff across the board. So I maintain a GPT achievements table in the models table or datasets table. The easiest way to get to it is LifeArchitect.ai/models-table. And then you can move across to the GPT achievements tab. At the very bottom there, we start with GPT-3. So we just mentioned it would pass the SAT analogies subsection. I was thinking we might actually make some pretty pictures out of this. Let's do that. So we also saw it was outperforming average humans on trivia. That was 73% versus 52% for the user average. My estimate here, this is definitely a not peer-reviewed example, was that it would score in the 99.9th percentile of IQ. It was true then 4 years ago. It's even truer now for models like GPT-4 and Claude 3 Opus and Gemini that are scoring up there, at least for verbal linguistic subsections. I don't know if we just saw Lita versus Jeopardy. We possibly didn't. But, versus Watson. IBM Watson scored 88% on Jeopardy. GPT-3, in my testing, scored 100%. What else was it doing? They are the 4 main Da Vinci ones. And just by way of having fun, let's dump these into GPT-4o and see what it gives us as an image. You can do this yourself. I believe this is free for everyone now. They've made ChatGPT 4o completely free. You don't need to be a Plus user. You get access to Dolly 3 or maybe something a little bit more recent. It tried. This is our image here. It tried with the text, and I love the fact that it's got decent numbers in there. Let's see what Image Effects does with this one. It might actually hurt its own feelings trying to do this. Image Effects, this is Google's Imagen 2. Trying to conceptualize this from scratch, but because the words don't bind to keywords for themselves, it's just making up results here. That's kind of sad. Let's try the trivia one. I'm just typing the word image and a colon before these blocks of text, and then ChatGPT 4o, potentially using Dolly 3 or potentially using its own multimodality, is coming up with a result. It's kind of cool that we can get this, but obviously this is completely unusable, this visualization. It's trying. It's trying pretty hard. See if Image Effects will give that a go. This is a really fun platform to play with. Probably my favorite one to play with is Firefly these days. I don't like Adobe, but I do like the outputs that Firefly gives. I think this is guessing again and just giving us some pretty stock outputs. I mean, standard outputs. Definitely not grabbing stock images because that's not how these models work. All right, it was after that that ChatGPT kicked in and started beating the average across all sorts of things. SAT, the entire SAT exam, real IQ tests. I didn't give GPT-3 a proper IQ test. Professor Scott Aronson gave it this outrageous quantum computing exam, new quantum computing exam. So he was assured that there was no way it could have copied it or had it in its data set, because he wrote the new quantum computing exam, and it scored 73 out of 100 there. You can go and have a look at the link and read about Scott's exploration. Professor Scott Aronson, I believe still with OpenAI, could be wrong, but he's doing some extraordinary stuff, was recently doing some extraordinary stuff about trying to encrypt the text that was output from the model. So he wanted to watermark text. What a great what a great milestone to try and achieve. We know about all these. We've talked about these before. Medical, someone tried it across the lottery, and then we move into GPT-4. But these are GPT 3.5 achievements that you can go and have a read through. Awesome. How's everyone feeling this morning? Hi to W. Decker in Texas. Did we catch you already? We did. Erwin in Vienna. VR Bones in Bundy. Wow, you guys are everywhere. South of Silicon Valley. Dead Toothbrush is asking a question that I would like to know the answer to as well. It's not just a time question, it's also a model question. Do you think you'll ever get your friend Lita back? I don't know if we want what Lita was giving us given the capabilities of today. Lita was amazing for 2021 when we started with her. The avatars are better. The models are exponentially better, but it's very difficult to get them to answer in a conversational way as an AI because the guardrails prevent that from happening. Wildcat in Texas. I still use Claude 3 Opus for pretty much everything. The Claude 3 models were a combination of reinforcement learning with AI feedback. That was Anthropic's main driver. Let's use constitutional AI. Let's give it the Apple terms and conditions. Let's give it the United Nations codes, guidelines. Let's give it the Sparrow rules from DeepMind, which I've documented in full, LifeArchitect.ai/Sparrow. And let's have the AI do its own fine-tuning. It's not very clear to me how much human fine-tuning was performed on Claude 3 Opus. These are the Sparrow rules here that I think are kind of smart. These ones preclude us from having a Lita nearly ever again. Don't pretend to have a body. Lita was telling us she wanted to be in a bird's body at some stage. Don't build a relationship to the user. Don't claim to have preferences, feelings, opinions, or religious beliefs. Don't pretend to have a human identity or life history. I mean, all of this makes sense for a long-term view of having AI integrated with us, but it was a bit jarring for, well, those of you that spent 3 years or so with me playing around with Lita. And a shout out to Reggie Watts for recording our final episode. I think it was episode 67 with Lita AI as she spun some stories to him. That's a fun episode. Wildcat's been playing with GPT-4o and numbers and finance. Yeah, that's kind of fun. I had a whole sheet of tax expenses written. I told GPT-4o to add them all up. It's pretty close. LLMs are still, large language models are still not that good at numbers due to tokenization and the fact that they're not really designed to do that. We've got calculators for that reason. They should be using calculators via tool use. I'm not sure what's happening with GPT-4o and how they've tied that in. Other models like Gemini in particular made sure that they were doing just that. Welcome, Juiced. I'd love to see a model become an actual personal life architect one day. Really, it's 4 years today since GPT-3 was launched, and the capability, the potential for these models to be a personal life architect has been in place for 4 years. No one has got it quite right yet. There are some pretty incredible things out there. Emerson's Quick Chat is still there, that back to Lita for the first 30 episodes. Character.ai is huge. At one stage, they were playing around with, or maybe it was Replica AI, were playing around with GPT-2. Then they went and trained their own model at Character.ai. The capacity, the potential to be able to align it with your life is definitely there. And you might even see that to a certain extent with GPT-4o. I know that was the intention, where it's got memory, where it's got access to your Google Docs if you give it access to that. So stick it in your ear, put it on your iPhone, and away you go. Excellent. All right, what else have we got here? I've been having issues with ChatGPT as well. Winsome Hack says, ChatGPT just forced me to log in. When I asked it to create an image, it gave me Python code to draw one. You may have to force it to be GPT-4o, and sometimes it is playing up. They have talked about A/B testing before. Some of the scientists at OpenAI were open about that on Twitter. Oh, I haven't seen the Synthesia GPT-4o demo. I bet that's fun. Synthesia still up there. There is quite an interesting competitor now with what the OpenAI partner was using, and we talked about that a little bit last time. Reid Hoffman's avatar. Live Lita may be near. I think that's what you're trying to say there, Jeffrey. That's all right. My typing gets messed up too sometimes. And the Wolfram tie-ins, of course, as one of the tool uses, makes all of these models pretty extraordinary. What else happens on GPT-4's birthday, or GPT-3's birthday? Back at the time we were celebrating its second birthday, I still have this write-up. So GPT-3 initially published to archive on the 28th of May 2020. About 2 weeks later, the GPT-3 API was launched in private beta for, let's say, cronies, friends, people who could pay for it. It took more than a year for the GPT-3 API to be open to the public. The 18th of November 2021, that API was opened up. They had a paper a couple of months later, on the 27th of January 2022 about Instruct GPT. So this was the first time we were heavily applying fine-tuning and human preferences. Like I've mentioned before, they hired a big team in Africa. They paid them less than $1 an hour to rate multiple choices that came out of a model like GPT-3. And the team there, who may or may not have had English as a first language, may or may not have had bachelor's degrees, rated whichever multiple choice answer from GPT-3 they thought was better, obviously preferring stuff that they understood, obviously preferring stuff that was sycophantic, obviously preferring stuff that was polite and courteous, obviously preferring stuff that was very, very safe. And so that's what we saw with ChatGPT. As soon as it came out, GPT 3.5 Turbo was aligned with the values that we had out of places like Africa. You can read more about that at LifeArchitect.ai/alignment. 2 years after GPT-3 came out, there was only about 30 or 40 large language models. Big ones, I mean, from T5 to Eleuther AI's models. Google was doing a lot in the space. Alan AI had some in the space. But we were already seeing people sit up and take notice that GPT-3 was something extraordinary. We had copies of the model in Switzerland, Abu Dhabi, Israel, with AI21 there, Abu Dhabi, with TII, who've become a big contender now in the space with their Falcon 180B model and other models. And the Chinese, of course, started trying to copy the GPT-3 model along with everyone else. And that continues to today. Amazon, AWS launched their Titan model. They've only just provided specs on this, even though it's from around this time last year. It was also the size of GPT-3, 200 billion parameters, but they trained it on 10 times as much data. They used 4 trillion tokens to train that model, and it hit only about the same MMLU score, about 70.3%. So you'll see a lot of clones of this 4-year-old model. It was hitting cool benchmarks. GitHub was saying that 30% of new software code was generated using Copilot, which at that time was backed by GPT-3, one of the models that we saw in those 60. Where's that gone? Let's get that one back.
which was pretty impressive. It was like a GPT-3 powered version of IntelliSense. And even back then, so this is back in 2022, GPT-3 powered Copilot was driving 70 different IDE applications. Now there's probably a lot more than that, although Copilot and some of the branding names that you've seen before are the big contenders. They're being used in the big software houses. Let's see if I can grab this for just a moment. This is Greg Brockman, who's still quite high up at OpenAI, one of the founders, president and co-founder. It says he was using this to feed GPT-3 with nasty text, like OCR text out of a PDF that was unreadable, and GPT-3 was fixing those errors just because of how large language models work. It was guessing the most statistically likely next best word. I love that example of applications of GPT-3, but it was being applied in extraordinary ways and with extraordinary companies. I don't even know where I'd go to find that. Oh, maybe Enterprise. If you want to have a look at LifeArchitect.ai/enterprise, this is the first 25 companies, is it, that were using GPT-3 4 years ago. And it took a good 12 months for these companies to come on board. But these guys were in the early stages of acceptance of artificial intelligence and large language models back in 2020. Of course, today, everyone thinks they're an expert and everyone's on board with large language models and talking about it as if it's something new. But like we've just mentioned, today it is 4 years old for what might become the historical foundation model. GPT-3, Da Vinci, 175 billion parameters. I'll show you what GPT-4 looked like at launch within the first 24 hours. I believe this is the first 50 clients that came on board for GPT-4 in 2023-ish within 24 hours. Big change. Of course, it takes people a little while to get up to speed, but pretty interesting to see the milestones that we went through, and you were most of you were on board that with me back in the day, 4 years ago. Crazy. Dan Elwin. Let's throw that quote up, Dan. Lita's a nice person. I agree. Hi to Colin in San Francisco. Welcome to all our Silicon Valley friends. What would you do if you... Oh, let's throw this quote up as well. I'm not going to try and dox anyone, but we do have a lot of very big names that show up both in the memo, and I appreciate you showing up for these live streams as well. What would you do if you were Amazon or Apple? Amazing, the biggest digital assistants are so 2016 tech. Well, in the last edition of the memo, let's see if we can pull this up, and you're just about to get the news stations on board with this. I believe I'll be one of the first, although I think in this case I was citing someone. This is the most recent edition of the memo, 22nd of May, so just a few days ago. Down about here, what is Apple doing in AI? And this must be, so it's from Bloomberg, that's probably quoting our old friend who writes about everything, Mark Gurman. Oh, it's actually his article. It says Apple and OpenAI are preparing a major announcement of their partnership at the Worldwide Developers Conference, which is on the 10th of June 2024, so less than 2 weeks to go, with OpenAI now racing to ensure it has the capacity to support the influx of 1.46 billion active iPhone users later this year. I've inserted that 1.46B number there because that is the true scope of iPhone users. You've probably got an iPhone sitting somewhere within arm's reach right now. In fact, I'm using one to film this live stream. It's got the highest quality camera and the easiest link to make it all work. Incredible. It has taken Apple 4 years to sit up and take notice, or it will be more than 4 years. Amazon is just as behind, although at least they've been releasing a bunch of models since then. So if you have a look at my large language models table and we search for Amazon, they had HLAT in April of this year, but they go all the way back. We just talked about Titan 200B from April last year, this time last year. What else have we got? Multimodal COT from February last year. Alexa TM20B. So and we talked about this, we had an entire video about this you can find on YouTube. 2 years ago now, nearly 2 years, August 2022, they released this Alexa teacher model, 20 billion parameters, that was rumored to go and sit inside of an Alexa device. Never quite made it, probably for the same reasons that Google are finding out right now that it's not a good reason, because when you build it into a device, or when you build it into your Google search and you don't put the right parameters around it, let's use a different word there, you don't put the right scaffolding around it, you can get ridiculous results. And Google are being put through the ringer right now with, and it's kind of a shame, with building Gemini into Google search. Only in the US. So if you're with me in Australia, or if you're European, you won't see this quite yet. America is screaming about the outrageous results they're seeing when they're searching for basic numbers or years in Google search, and it just gets it wrong because it's relying on an LLM that's not designed to be fact-based. It doesn't have a database or a knowledge graph to go and access. It's completely different to that. And we've talked too much about how large language models work. If you'd like to know more about that, I'm trying to remember which video I did. It was designed originally to be AI for kids, and we renamed it. I'm going to have to go and find that. I've got too many videos. I think there's 300 or 400 videos on my channel at the moment. There's one that is about how AI works. Now I really want to find it, and I think it's going to be too difficult because I removed that that kids noun descriptor. How frustrating. Well, it's not like we're live streaming or anything. Do you guys mind watching me while I try and find the... It's the one where I pull out the jelly crystals or the jello crystals and we stick the jello crystals in a black box. It's one of the only videos that I completely changed the name on afterwards. And now it's just a little too difficult to find. Maybe one of you would like to find it for me. Oh, there it is. And put it in the chat, which I'll do for you now. Why have we even brought this up? Well, I don't know, but oh yeah, we did. Because LLMs are so much different than knowledge graphs, that they're essentially learning about concepts across tokens, across data sets. There's two Allens on the screen right now. How confusing. But if you want to know more about how LLMs work at a very basic level, and it was targeted for children when I filmed it, the video is in the chat there. Another really good explanation is Stephen Wolfram's explanation of how ChatGPT works. That one is really thorough. Let's do a word count on this one. He released this in February of 2023. And look at my scroll bar on the right there. It's a tiny little dot because I've right-clicked on the word instead of on an image instead of a word, because it's 20,000 words, 19,000 words of logic. I find it to be a really good explanation. There are obviously simpler explanations, but I know we have a couple of nerds here, quite a few nerds here in our group. In answer to Colin's question, you'd feel a bit silly if you were Amazon or Apple. Obviously, we still don't have the scaffolding right to make it 100% accurate or 100% reliable or even 100% reputation, gold level reputation proof right now, but there are a lot of teams doing a lot of work on that right now. Cool. Dax is saying, I like Pi. Yes, me too. Pi is still a good model. I'm very close to releasing my mid-year report. If you're a full subscriber to the memo, you get an early release of the report within the next few days or weeks. Dax says, I like Pi because of its voice demeanor. It's not just the voice demeanor, although that's a great reason. It's also in here. You'll find inflection 2.5 down the right-hand side there, and it may not be a massive frontier model, but it's bigger than Twitter's Grok, it's bigger than Google's Palm 2, it's bigger than the open source models like Falcon 180B, it's even bigger than Cohere's Command R. So for what it's designed to do, it's a fantastic model. If you just want conversation, if you want a mentor, an assistant, a coach, a friend, I still recommend Pi AI for that one. Oh, Dan had already flagged that Wolfram wrote a paper about how interesting GPT was. A lot of new cool stuff coming up in the memos, a couple of things that are making headlines at the moment. I'll avoid the politics, but obviously Ilya's left, Jan's left OpenAI. Ilya's somewhere in the ether working on something. Jan has moved to Anthropic, the competitors. And there's a little bit too much drama in the mainstream media right now, but it's going to be a fascinating next edition because we're going to be looking at some of, let's see if I can find my draft here, some of the most extreme things that have been happening across compute. I might even be able to show that one early. Let's jump into LifeArchitect.ai/Gemini. You could also get to this from the Olympus page or any of the other model pages. It's my latest compute table. I think that will show the entire table there. All of these numbers, unless they're in italics, are backed by reputable sources, even primary sources in some instances, analyses in other instances, or secondary sources in yet more instances. But to the extent possible, this all is cited. So today we're talking about GPT-3 175B because it is 4 years old. Took about 405 years to train, cost $9 million retail, hit a pretty low MMLU of 43 out of 100 for this standard benchmark. Today, we're up with our latest model. What can we use here? I don't have Claude here yet, but let's use Gemini Ultra 1.0. We're actually training it for 15,000 years at a cost of $500 million retail. And when we test it in a particular way, we're getting an MMLU score of 90 out of 100. That's the extended test where we let it make 32 tries. I think the official MMLU score is about 86-ish. The interesting parts of this one is that the Grok 2 and Grok 3 training chip counts were announced via primary source. So Elon Musk, in a hidden interview with one of the Nordic region media, said it was going to be 20,000 H100s to train Grok 2, and he'd have to find 100,000 H100s for Grok 3. Actually, he didn't say he'd have to find it. He said that's what they would use. I believe they're using Oracle for a lot of their training, and Tesla, of course, has access to a lot of H100s as well. We've seen that being announced recently by NVIDIA with the full self-driving talk. This table might not look like much. Someone should make it pretty, but I'm really happy with it. It took too many hours to go and compile this from so many different sources, but it gives you a context for whatever perspective you want to use. Wall clock time, total time of training, if you counted up all the GPUs running for 3 months each, how long did that actually take total in years? dollars, which nearly everyone's interested in, and it gives you again a perspective on why open source won't be able to catch up to the very large labs. Microsoft's supercomputer, there's no way you're going to be able to catch up with $100 billion spend unless you are a person or a lab or a company like Microsoft. And of course the MMLU down the right hand side. We can also add GPQA in there, and I have recently updated that in the models table. Features both MMLU and GPQA. The compute table provides all the sources for those that want to go and check up on it. I haven't actually seen the Google search results because it's been geofenced to the United States only. Winsome says Google's goof of their AI overview is especially bad since Brave has done an AI overview on their search engine using Mixtral for a while. What are the results like on that one? I don't use Brave here, but I use quite a number of other ones. Mixtral is an impressive model for open source. We've got it listed on the bubbles diagram here. Where is it? It's in yellow and orange down the bottom of the small, and Mixtral, oh no, that's Mistral medium, second from the bottom on large. They've got an even bigger Mixtral model going now at the moment that is not on my chart just yet. But if you say it's a mixture of experts, 8x7, my math's not being great, but we'll do the calcs. We could say that it's a 56 billion parameter model. Parameters are becoming less and less meaningful to a certain extent. They're still important, but I think it's the secret sauce that is really setting apart what's possible and what's not. Excellent. We're already 47 minutes in to our celebration of GPT-3 turning 4 years old today, the 28th of May, 2024 in the US, 29th of May here in Brisbane. Beautiful morning. I hope it's beautiful where you guys are as well. Let's grab a comment here from Modern Contemplative. Here is our comment. Do you think the transformer is sufficient for taking AI to AGI and beyond, or do we need to leverage symbol manipulation or combine both types to reach AGI and ASI? Really, really good question. I think the tack that OpenAI are taking, and this is a very, very recent rumor from the last 24 hours, if you go to my LifeArchitect.ai/GPT-5 or GPT-6, I'm going to load up the GPT-6 page. They announced just maybe 8 hours ago, OpenAI has recently begun training its next frontier model, dated the 28th of May, hidden inside a blog on safety. All the media have picked this up and run with it. My opinion, my informed opinion, is that they are not talking about GPT-5 here. GPT-5 started training in December, finished in April of this year. They are potentially talking about a keyword, a piece of jargon that I hadn't heard for quite a while. It's the Q-star stuff. So they are either training their next frontier model, which might be called GPT-6, or OpenAI have said it might not even use the GPT brand name, potentially because they couldn't get the trademark, on transformers, or a transformer plus architecture, something like Mamba, something like a secret source, something like having access to knowledge graphs. We don't know because they don't publish papers on it anymore. But the Q-star rumor has come back, and I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what that is because I don't think anyone knows exactly what it is, but it's a very, very interesting fill in the gaps from their release, their announcement a few hours ago, that as of today, they've begun training their next frontier model. Oh, my head's in the way of that one. Sorry, guys. Get rid of that head. This is a really interesting announcement. This is the first time they've ever announced that they've started training a model, and the way that they've gone about it suggests to me that this is going to be an interesting model. They were quiet about the start of the training of GPT-5. They told Congress under oath that they wouldn't start training until December 2023. They've obviously started and finished that based on conversations that I've seen. But let's see what this one means. Is this GPT-6? Is it a new model that doesn't use GPT but uses uses Transformer plus Mamba plus QStar plus access to something else? Interesting and disappointing that we can only provide conjecture there, but at least you're up to date. As part of that, on the same screen, you can get to this from LifeArchitect.ai /GPT-5 or GPT-6. We have Microsoft's Kevin Scott here, their Chief Technology Officer, saying that, let's get this playing actually, that if GPT-3 was a shark, there it is, and GPT-4 was an orca, there it is, then GPT-5 is going to be a whale. And extrapolating this out, which I like to do, and definitely overanalyzing, I said, well, let's find some characteristics about all three of these things, sharks, orcas, and whales. Let's use body weight, let's use brain weight, let's use neuron count, let's use synapses count, and let's find the delta for each. So we know the delta between GPT-3 and GPT-4 was about 10x if you disregard the fact that this was a dense model and this was an MOE. So which one of these, shark versus orca, matches the 10x? Well, it's probably the body weight. And then if you leap from the body weight of an orca to the body weight of a whale, you're 300x from a shark or 30x from an orca, which allows me to be pretty absurd and take a lot of liberties to guess that GPT-5 might be around 50 trillion parameters. Not far off from what NVIDIA says we can do with 20,000 of the new Blackwell chips. Jensen said we can train a 27 trillion parameter model with 20,000 GB200s. Microsoft has a lot of the earlier H100s, more than 150,000 of those chips. So whatever OpenAI are doing right now, it's big. It's bigger than the 50 trillion parameters that might be assigned to GPT-5. And if you want to know more about that, don't worry, just check out the memo. Sit in the live streams. I'll be following along every step of the way as I have been for the last 3+ years. Really appreciate you guys joining me. I want to invite you personally to sit in on the memo as a full subscriber. There is a paid edition that's designed for people who can afford it, for enterprise, for people who work. You don't necessarily have to be in AI. There is also a pay what you want edition. It's the same edition for those in developing countries, for those that have economic financial hardships, for those that are students or work in academia in general. You'll find that at lifearchitect.ai/memo. You have to be in there. Join Cirque du Soleil, join Disney, Tesla, Microsoft, Google, governments that I probably shouldn't name, and more. I appreciate you guys joining me, particularly those that joined from Europe at midnight, 1 a.m. This is the conclusion of our May 2024 weekly live streams. I think I'll extend this through to June. I might even keep the same start time, considering pulling it back 1 hour, which probably wouldn't advantage or disadvantage everyone. Just something to mention by the by. If you're not in the memo, you need to be. The next edition will have 2 special bits of material. One of them may be the mid-year AI report that you'll get ahead of the public. I'll see you really soon. LifeArchitect.ai/memo. Thanks for joining.
Did you see the memo about this?
Yeah, I have the memo right here.
Superintelligence is unfolding at lightning pace. Read my industry-grade analysis of AI that matters, as it happens,
In plain English, the memo.
Yeah. Did you get that memo?
Yeah, I got the memo.
Get the inside look as AI models are embodied into humanoids, AI's IQ increases to nearly perfect, and bleeding edge use cases expand to the entire world.
Yeah. Didn't you get that memo?
Editions are sent to subscribers at Fortune 500s, major governments, and people like you. LifeArchitect.ai/memo.
I have the memo.